What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be going over the past Star Wars weapons and content updates that we've had in Fortnite over the past few years. The first ever Star Wars collab we got was in late 2019, and now we are getting an entire Star Wars themed season next month. And a lot of this past Star Wars content is kind of expected to return, so if you guys haven't played through every Star Wars content, here's some of the items that you may expect to be coming to the game. As always, if you guys do enjoy this video, find it helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you like to see more, and comment down below what you think of the upcoming Star Wars season. So the first Star Wars update was in December 2019, I believe, and this update added the E11 blaster and the original lightsabers, and both of these weapons were quite bad in my opinion, but the original lightsabers got a lot of hate at the time and they were pretty annoying. With the regular lightsabers, all you had was a melee attack, and then if you hit your aim down sight button, you could block bullets, but it did have an aspect where, like, if you took too much damage, you would get stunned and your block would be broken, similar to what we've had with like the Riot Shield and the Captain America shield as well. And then it had a melee attack, it could do good damage. At the time, this was pretty annoying and a lot of players hated dealing with it. But if you look back at these lightsabers now compared to like the more recent melee weapons we've had, I think these original lightsabers are some of the weakest or less effective melee weapons. It's just like we weren't as good at dealing with melee weapons at the time. We didn't have as much movement items, but like I feel like especially within the past like 2 or 3 years, the like quality and effectiveness of melee weapons in Fortnite has definitely been improved. So I don't really expect these original lightsabers to come back. The E11 blaster was a very bad weapon. This was a blaster, and the bloom on it was so bad, it was memed that you would have the aim of a stormtrooper if you were using this, because this is the weapon the stormtroopers use in Star Wars, and the stormtroopers in Star Wars are kind of like memed and roasted for having like the worst aim ever and just like being terrible. And that is how it felt using this. Not a lot of people liked it. It wasn't really that good outside of like close medium range. And then even in close medium range, the regular SMGs were just much better than the E11. So I feel like this was a very bad, very irrelevant weapon, and it never really got much use at all. And then the original lightsabers in E11 have come and gone throughout the game many different times. Also, in Chapter 2, we got the Mandalorian content. This is some stuff that I actually didn't play with because I quit the game for most of Chapter 2. But the Mandalorian update had the Amban sniper rifle. This is a sniper rifle that had a thermal sight on it. And one unique aspect of this is that it couldn't be hip fired. If you tried to shoot it without aiming in, you would do like a melee attack instead. And I feel like as far as snipers go, this is just a very mid sniper rifle. I feel like this weapon doesn't get the most love. Like, it's not the most, you know, fan favorite sniper rifle, but it's not the most like hated one either. It's just kind of somewhere in the middle. It's a fine sniper, gets the job done, isn't super terrible, but also isn't super overpowered. So it just kind of sits in the middle. The Mandalorian jetpack, if you guys are recent players, you probably hear jetpack and you're thinking that, you know, the War Machine hover jets. It was not like that. It was more similar to the original like Fortnite jetpack. I believe this jetpack is currently actually in the reload mode, but you can just kind of hold boost and then you boost up and then you fall when you're no longer boosting, and you can actually take fall damage when using the Mandalorian jetpack and the original jetpack. The Mandalorian jetpack is expected to return. It was kind of shown in the reveal trailer for the upcoming Fortnite season. At this point, we don't really know if it will function identically to how it did in the past or if they'll rework it in some ways. But as far as the Chapter 2 Mandalorian jetpack goes, it was much more similar to the base Fortnite jetpack, which is just kind of good for some movement, but not like a game changer in fights like how the War Machine hover jets were. So if that was a concern you had, I wouldn't be too worried about it, but we'll have to wait and see. Darth Vader's lightsaber came in Chapter 3. And this was a lightsaber that had the alternate attack of being thrown. So you could use the regular melee of it, just like the original lightsabers. You could block bullets with it, I believe, like the regular lightsabers. But if you were blocking and then hit your attack button at the same time, your character would throw the lightsaber. And this was a unique aspect, and it was definitely better than the regular lightsabers. But I still think that it wasn't nearly as good as some of the more recent melee weapons we've gotten, like the Nitro Fist, the Typhoon Blade, the Kneecapper Bat. Melee weapons have had insane power creep over the years, and I think the Darth Vader lightsaber was just very meh. I think in build mode is where it kind of got the most use, because there was ways to kind of throw it through walls and stuff. Like if you threw it and then positioned yourself in a way, it would hit the enemy on the way back to you. That was probably the most effective way to use the Darth Vader lightsaber, but in terms of being something that was like dominating fights, it really wasn't that. After that, though, in Chapter 4, we started to get lightsabers that could kind of dominate fights in the form of the Force powers. So with the lightsabers up to this point, you had to get them from chests, or the Darth Vader one you would get from eliminating Darth Vader. The Force powers in Chapter 4, Season 2, you would have to speak to an NPC to get like Jedi training. And then when you got Jedi training, you got a lightsaber along with Force powers. And then these lightsabers also had like a better sprint and a better jump, kind of similar to what we've had with the Bat and the Typhoon Blade. As I said, the melee weapons started getting better and better over the years, and this is just kind of a clear example with these Force powers compared to the original lightsabers. So they were much better than the OG lightsabers because they had better movement, but they also had these Force abilities. There was the Force Push, the Force Pull, and the Throw of the rocks. The push would just push enemies away from you, and people would kind of use this to knock people into the storm. I don't really remember if it would cause fall damage if people were knocked off height, but I don't think it did because I don't really remember that being a problem at the time. The Force Pull would kind of pull people towards you, and that would kind of leave them susceptible to getting like spam meleeed, and so pairing that with a melee weapon was kind of good. And then the Throw or the rocks was the one that was kind of the most irritating to me to play against. You would just launch a bunch of rocks at the enemy. That would do a lot of damage. And if I remember correctly, you could basically one-shot somebody with this. Like, I don't know if it quite did one-shot, but if you hit them with all the rocks, you would do so much damage that that opponent was going to be very weak or just dead if they were already missing some of their HP. So these Force powers were much better than the original lightsabers, and I think as far as Star Wars content goes, the most impactful Star Wars updates that we've had to the game in terms of like impacting the meta and impacting how people played was the Force powers update that we got in Chapter 4. Along with that update, we got the DC-15 blaster. This was another blaster that, you know, functioned somewhat similar to the E11. I believe it had like different damage, different fire rate, and different bloom. But like it was a blaster style weapon where they had unlimited ammo, and the E11 also had this, where they had unlimited ammo, but they would just kind of overheat as you shot them. And then if you shot too much, you would have to like wait for the weapon to cool down prior to being able to shoot again. So managing that overheat was part of the skill in the weapon. But this was another weapon that just like, I feel like had too much bloom and wasn't accurate enough to be a main AR. It was kind of competing with the Red Eye at the time, and the Red Eye was a very good AR. And then if you're looking at it as like an SMG replacement, the twin mag SMG at the time, or even the tactical pistol, was something most people preferred as a spray weapon. So I don't think the DC-15 was a weapon that really got that much use. I remember people at the time somewhat liking it and definitely having a higher opinion of it than the E11, but I don't think it was like the meta weapon at the time, and you weren't really seeing a lot of the top players using this, just because, as I said, it was not a better spray weapon than the SMG, not a better AR than the Red Eye. It kind of just didn't really have much of a purpose. And that's how I felt about both the DC-15 and the E11. The final Star Wars update that we've got in terms of like leading up to this point is going to be the Chewbacca update. This brought the Wookiee bowcaster to the game, and this was another blaster style weapon that had unlimited ammo but had the overheating aspect. And one unique thing about this is if you just tap fired it, you would get one sort of damage, and it was more of like a rifle damage. And then if you held your shoot button down, you would charge the weapon, granting you more damage and explosive damage. And this is also a weapon that was very impactful, or at least like good. You could use it to get splash damage on people around walls and stuff. And if you did hit the enemy head on, you would get a solid, like, nice chunk of damage. If the Wookiee bowcaster returns to the game next season, I think it will be somewhat relevant. I don't know if it'll be like the meta weapon. And even in Chapter 5 Season 2, when this initially came out, I don't know if it was really like the meta weapon or like the best thing, but it was certainly something that was like usable and relevant. And that definitely is a step up than a lot of the other compared to like a lot of the other Star Wars content we've had over the years. So I would rate, of these blasters, if I had to rank them, I would say the Wookiee bowcaster number 1, the DC-15 number 2, and then the E11 as the worst blaster we've had. And it seems like we're going to be getting even more blaster style weapons next season, but I would expect a lot of these other blasters to return. And I am very curious if we're going to have regular weapons mixed in with the Star Wars loot, or if it's just going to be entirely Star Wars weapons next season. I think if they really wanted to go all out and make it a Star Wars season, that would be the thing they do. But we'll have to wait and see in, you know, just under 2 weeks when we get the Star Wars season. But that is going to be it for this video. I just wanted to quickly run down some of the past Star Wars items we've had, just so people can get a picture for what they were like if they didn't play back then. If you guys did enjoy this, find it helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you like to see more, comment down below which of these you hope to see return in the upcoming Star Wars season, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.